Meet the Rusted Raider, a mighty individual who has thrown off the shackles of society and now is just having fun hitting things and running through the wasteland with his dog. The special stats for this build are 5 strength, 1 perception, 10 endurance, 4 charisma, 7 intelligence, 1 agility and 2 luck. This not only includes the special book in Sanctuary, but also does require at least 1 bobblehead, though not perception or agility, as those are both bottomed out. With high intelligence you'll be levelling up nice and quick, and with maxed endurance you'll have plenty of hit points to withstand all manner of attacks. While strength is also technically very important for a build like this, the base stat doesn't need to increase, as power armor will increase this for you. The major perks for this build are Heavy Gunner, Big Leagues, Lone Wanderer, Blacksmith, Science, and Gun Nut. Heavy Gunner boosts damage with all big guns, including the minigun we wield. As well as doubling damage output, this perk also improves hipfire accuracy and gives a chance to stagger, a brilliant effect for a fast firing weapon like a minigun. Big Leagues is our other damage boosting perk, this time for melee. The additional benefits of this perk are a chance to disarm, cripple or behead those you hit, and a sweeping arc area of attack whenever you swing a melee weapon. Lone Wanderer is quite possibly the strongest perk in the game, increasing the damage you deal, reducing the damage you can take, and throwing some extra carry weight your way to boot. The downside is that you can't travel with a follower, though dog meat doesn't count, hence we still get to have him on our side. There are a trio of crafting perks for this build, starting with Blacksmith, which allows modding our melee weapons to get some really powerful upgrades. But Blacksmith alone won't be enough, you'll also need to invest in Science. Not only will this unlock the best melee mods alongside Blacksmith, but it's also critical for enhancing our suit of power armor. Final of the crafting trilogy is Gun Nut, which allows for advanced improvements for any big guns we wield. Onto the minor perks now, which are Chemist, Life Giver, Medic, and Solar Powered. The Chemist perk, when maxed out, makes any chems you take last 3 times as long as normal. This can allow you to slow down time for longer with Jet, boost strength and endurance for a full fight with buff out, and just generally enhance your character with much more ease. Life Giver provides a hearty boost to the number of hit points you have, as well as giving you health regen with the final rank, which I've always been very fond of, as it ensures your health stays topped up between battles. Medic is the more proactive way to ensure your health stays topped up, as each rank of this perk makes Stimpaks and Radaways more efficient and effective. With the perk maxed out, just a single of each of these can fully heal you or fully cure you of radiation. The Solar Powered perk gives you bonus strength and endurance, heals radiation, and restores hit points, though only when in sunlight. While these effects are pretty great, they do only apply during daytime hours and while outside, which does somewhat limit the actual practical benefits. The role-playing perks for this build are Attack Dog, Chem Resistant, and Scrounger. Attack Dog is arguably the best of these perks, as the final rank makes it so you take 10% less damage when travelling with Dogmeat. The other ranks aren't as powerful, though they do make Dogmeat a more effective combatant, which is still useful when he's your only follower. Chem Resistant removes the chance to get addicted to any chems you take. Personally, I don't think this is essential, even for a build that uses a lot of different chems, as curing addiction is easy enough in the world of Fallout, with either a Dictol or a quick trip to the doctor, but it still is one less thing to worry about, and will only cost 2 perk points. And finally we have the Scrounger perk. This will allow you to gather more 5mm rounds as you travel, which can be handy considering how quickly a minigun will eat through them. A lot of people online claim this perk also makes it so you find more fusion cores, though I've not found any reliable sources online that claim this, and I haven't been able to prove it in my own testing, so I wouldn't recommend making a beeline for this perk for that reason. The big gun for this build is Ashmaker, the legendary minigun you can pick up at the end of the Big Dig. This comes with the Incendiary legendary effect, adding 15 points of fire damage to the weapon. The added damage from setting your enemy on fire is pretty great, though it's worth noting that this is a damage over time effect rather than an increase to the damage of each bullet. For this reason, I modded Ashmaker with the Trigun barrel, which increases base damage but reduces fire rate. I also throw on a Shredder and a Paint Job, though both of these were purely just aesthetic choices. Technically, the Shredder is potentially powerful, and allows you to use your minigun as a sort of melee weapon when it runs out of ammo. You do, however, have a much stronger melee weapon in the form of the Sledgehammer. This is technically quite a low tier melee weapon, likely being found quite early on, but thanks to the added modding options for weapons that came alongside Nuka World, this basically becomes the strongest melee weapon in the game. I went with the Heavy Shocking Sharp Rocket mod, which not only drastically increases base damage, but also adds a little energy damage, some damage over time effects, and a chance to stun. You will need maxed out blacksmith and science perks for this, but as these perks increase you will steadily get more unlocks to work through. I didn't have a legendary variant for this weapon, though apparently you can get a crippling sledgehammer in Far Harbour by siding with Cog during the Price of Memory quest. With the legendary system being the way it is though, there's always a chance you can randomly stumble across a solid version of the weapon as you travel. The armour for this build is a full set of welded Raider power armour. Now technically the Overboss power armour is superior, but I stuck with the standard Raider gear for aesthetic purposes. Mod-wise, I threw on motion assist servos onto the torso, which increases your strength and therefore your melee damage. For the helmet, I went with a targeting HUD which highlights enemies in red, making for easier target acquisition. And for the legs, I threw on flame resistance, which can be found at Saugus Ironworks if playing on Anniversary Edition. These make you immune to being set on fire and also provide the highest energy resistance. If you aren't on Anniversary Edition, then feel free to go for something else instead, as there's still a good few options for leg mods. For arm mods, I technically made a mistake, as I assumed they all just apply to unarmed attacks. However, apparently optimised bracers reduces the AP cost for power attacks for melee as well as unarmed, so these would be the correct choice to go with. All in all, Raider power armour is pretty much the weakest of the power armours, though it will still provide you with nearly 700 damage resistance and more than 350 energy resistance, along with over 1000 radiation resistance. Still a pretty good resistance spread, with the added benefit of being incredibly cheap to repair as it only requires steel to patch up. When it comes to factions for this build, I'd recommend focusing on the Raider gangs in Nuka World. Main game factions don't really gel all that well with Raider builds, but the Nuka World DLC is literally designed for them. In terms of which gangs to focus on, it's probably optimal to try and side with the Pack and the Disciples, as they're the more melee focused of the gangs. The follower for this build will be Dogmeat. I equipped him with a bunch of different dog armour in order to make him fit in more with the look of a Raider's dog. This armour sadly doesn't actually provide any damage resistance for Dogmeat, but it still looks pretty cool. I did also have access to the Transdogrifier, where I gave him more of a grey coat, which blended well with the armour. While Dogmeat isn't the strongest of followers, he's at least small enough to easily attack enemies over the top of him, and he'll happily go along with whatever you want to do with no need to fret about negative reactions when you start taking chems or shooting settlers. This build is all about having fun while messing with the wasteland. While Raider builds do tend to be quite evil, this particular character is more focused on being free and heading down more of a chaotic anarchist path with the added element of selfishness. You should focus on having fun wrecking things and just being a big brute who doesn't care about the consequences of their actions. Melee is definitely the strongest way to go with this build, with your sledgehammer being able to crush anything with ease. It does swing quite slowly, but the huge damage numbers more than make up for this. Plus the arc of the weapon makes it very easy to hit multiple enemies at once. While not as strong, your minigun still dishes out some very solid DPS and gives you a ranged option. This is very helpful when facing enemies you can't easily reach, like wall-mounted turrets, or for when you need to keep your distance but don't want to stop attacking. Chems are a great way to pump up this build's power. My personal favourite is Jet, as slowing down time and then shooting a flaming minigun is insanely cool and never really gets old. Buff Out is great for giving you an increase in melee damage and a bunch more hit points, and never forget that Med-X is pretty much the best way to deal with poison damage. All in all, chems are just great and will make you significantly stronger. While Nuka World is obviously the ideal thing to focus on, you can technically play this build without the DLC, so on the off chance you don't own it, don't let that stop you from playing. The only change you'd probably want to make is switching out the sledgehammer for a super sledge. Without the Nuka World added modifications, super sledges are more powerful, though with them, sledgehammers do outclass them quite a bit. The Rusted Raider lived a fairly standard life in the pre-war times. He could be seen as just an average American citizen. He went to college, served in the army briefly, and then settled down to an office job so he could raise a family. None of this ever really felt like it was what he wanted to do, but it was always seen as the correct way to live life. He was an individual who quite easily succumbed to the pressures of society, and spent decades just trying to be the person everyone expected him to be. His only regular moments of freedom was when he took out his dog on long walks, as all alone in the wilderness he could feel the weight of expectations lift from him. When the bombs drop, it will be a complete uprooting of his life, and quite a traumatic event. But when he awakes hundreds of years later, he once again feels the weight of society lift off his shoulders. He no longer has to do what others expect of him, and can live life however he wants to. This new world may be brutal and dangerous, but for the first time in his life, he can finally become his own person. Thank you all very much for watching this build. If you enjoyed it, then make sure to hit the like button, and feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. I have a huge number of character builds on this channel, so feel free to check out the playlist section for more of those, or subscribe if you want to see even more builds in the future. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.